So, guys, we're here to talk about in-game build for Rogue. This is a rapid fire build. It is a beautiful, amazing build. I really love it personally, and it has been by far more explosive gameplay than the Twisted Blades were from the beginning. And let me break it down for you guys. Let's start with the legendary aspects. Um, for me, I think there's multiple different things you could do with the helmet, right? So I personally do a shield. So I do the barrier from killing the elites. A lot of people like to do the disobedience for the extra armor, which is understandable because of damage reduction. So it's like a flat damage reduction overall. And the chest armor, a lot of people like to do cheats aspect. It's a good one for like movement speed and to keep you like away from the giant packs when you're in a range. You want to keep as far away and do as much damage as you want. And in my opinion, I like the survivability more of the momentum passive one, to where you get the passive HP for the momentum. And there's another one as well that is good. It's a HP per enemy standing next to you. And that one is absolutely amazing for survivability when you get in those giant packs and get CC'd and stunned. Um, Aspect of synergy is an amazing, absolutely amazing skill when you use two agility skills. So in this build, they'll be using two agility skills. They'll be using dash and shadow step. I personally take out dash and the aspect of synergy in this build as well. I take out dash and I put in dark shrouds, which is an amazing, more survivability than the dash. Obviously, yes, you can get away and have more movement with the dash and CC. But in my opinion, I think the survivability with the Dark Shrouds is a lot more consistent, to where you can take less damage in those crazy packs. So if you do get CC'd or happen to hit that, sphere or the Ring of Frost, those will all be detrimental to your death in hardcore or softcore, depending on what your playstyle is. And then the Umbrus, this is a very important one. You definitely need this because this gives you a Dark Shroud Shadow. It pretty much gives you like an extra shroud from using your critical strikes with your marksman skills. This gives you more survivability as well. And then the pentagraves are always like a super important thing and an aspect in this build because it gives you a lot of movement speed, a lot of damage with your chilled enemies because you're going to be kiting them with the rapid fire, so you're not going to be really up close and fighting them. You're going to be like running away, shooting, etc. And then obviously placing traps for CC and slowing them down to gather them up in giant packs so you can funnel them together. Um, the aspect of repeating is this is the most important aspect in this build, and we'll be going into another one that's important as well that I kind of replaced a different one with in here too, because so currently I don't have synergy because I'm not using two agility aspects here. I use the arrows of rain aspect, which this is absolutely instrumental on explosive DPS, where you could literally clear a nightmare dungeon in like 2 minutes. It's absolutely insane. The repeating is for ricocheting against another target. So when you have the arrow rains and the imbuement and the ricochet, you literally see giant mobs of 100 disappear in one rapid fire burst. It's absolutely the most fun, beautiful thing to see in this game. If you guys like to see things die quick, if you guys want to power level your friends, this is the build to go if you guys are rogue players. Accelerating aspect, this is very important for your attack speed. So when you want to be able to kill faster, do more damage, DPS output, this is where you gain your attack speed from. Your accelerating aspect is very important. Put that in your amulet. Your blast trappers, this is for vulnerability because you get a lot of damage from vulnerability, and we'll go over the aspects of what those damage mean and how they affect this build. You get most of your damage in this build though from vulnerability. Again, the aspect of corruption, imbuement skills effects have 20 to 40% increased potency against vulnerable enemies. We're just going over that. Vulnerable enemies is where a lot of the damage is coming from this build. It's built around vulnerable enemies because when you use the imbuement with the arrow rains and the poison trap, literally everyone is vulnerable 24/7. And smiting aspect, This is very important here. You gain your more crowd control duration here, and you get increased critical strike chance against injured enemies. So, injured enemies are people below 30% HP, and you literally just destroy them immediately once they're about there because you already have about 30% critical strike chance overall. Sorry, I have a little stuttering problem. Edge Masters aspect, there was a lot of things going on with the nerfs and patches. So I took this off for a bit, but they just fixed it, so I put it back on because it wasn't working. If you guys didn't know about that for 2 or 3 days. And for the skills here, we use Shadow Clone. This is the massive increase in damage for when you want to do boss single DPS packs, or if you want to just run through the dungeon very, very, very fast. You just pop this, run through, you kill mobs, and literally burst down speeds immediately and very fast. The Shadow Imbuement, this is the imbuement I use. It is very, 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 very strong. You could use Poison instead as well. They work just about the same. But the reason why I like these is because of the modifiers. And the dash I don't use. Like I said, I used Dark Shroud here, which is an amazing aspect to take out for survivability instead of it being like a more faster movement through the dungeons. Obviously, you can clear the Nightmare dungeons faster this way. And the Shadow Step is mostly like pretty much your getaway, your arena trinket, kind of like getting out of CC, etc. Like this is your oh shit button. This is how you get places faster too when you want to get moving. Your poison trap is pretty much like your CC. It's pretty much like your bread and butter in this build. It's very nice. You can funnel enemies through it. It helps you survive a ton if you use it correctly and kite your mobs correctly through it. Specialization preparation. Every 100 energy you spend reduces your ultimate skill cooldown by 4 seconds. Using the ultimate skill resets the cooldowns of your other skills. So this is very important because you're always blowing through energy, and you technically really don't use a core skill. So you don't really have not a core skill, but a basic skill. So you don't really have that energy resource regeneration. You're really like anchoring on the rapid fire regeneration from just killing mobs over and over again and doing that amount of damage to where you never run out of energy, and the energy uptake is continuously and never away. There is an aspect in the Nightmare Dungeon tier I would say watch out for this build. It is where you lose energy or lose percentages of resource from distant enemies' damage. You probably should look into that before you go using this build and going into Nightmare Sigils. It's very important. Let's go into the skill tree, of course. These is where we're going to go over the passives since we have already went over the skills. This is where the passives are super important. Sturdy, this is close range damage reduction. This is survivability. This literally is a massive damage reduction increase. 12% is like almost having a low roll on your legs or your chest. Heal 3% of your maximum life when you critically strike close enemies. This is super important as well. So when you're getting amped up or getting killed by any of these mobs that are close, that normally you're going to be scared when they're close. It's when you're going to be dying. So you'll be doing this because and only because this is how you survive when you're about to get like murdered by a bunch of mobs up close. Stutter Step, critical striking an enemy grants 15% movement speed for 4 seconds. So this is more of like a survivability getaway, kind of kiting thing. So when you're basically building around critical strike and vulnerable damage, and this is where you get a lot more movement speed is when you do damage and you're always kiting and moving. So this is very important to keep your movement speed consistent. Rapid fire, this is your main core skill. This is where all your damage comes from. Weapon mastery, this is very, very good too, because if you see here, you get daggers increase 15% damage to health enemies. You get swords just base 9% increased damage. Bows increase 12% damage to vulnerable enemies. We really don't use bows that much in this build because, like I said, we build around vulnerable damage in here, and you get that extra 40% vulnerable from having a crossbow instead of a bow. I tried then testing the bows out in this build, and it seems like it's really not consistent because you would think the more attack speed could pay off for the vulnerable damage, and I've tested it. Really, in my opinion, it definitely does not pay off. I think the critical strike damage and the vulnerable damage from the crossbows are definitely overpowering than the attack speed. And the exploit here, this is very important. You deal 18% damage more to healthy and injured enemies. So this is pretty much just a flat 18% increase here, besides the mid ground there. So you'll be killing people very, very fast if they're healthy and injured. So 100% to 80% and then to 30% and below. There's Frigid Finesse here. This is very good. Then you can get these rolls on an amulet as well, which is cool. You deal 15% increased damage to shield enemies. This bonus increases to 30% against frozen enemies. So this comes in intake with your boots. So when you have the chilled boots and you're always kiting and they're running in that frost trail, this gives you even more damage on top of that with them being chilled. And trap mastery, this is important for your poison trap. Like I said, your bread and butter. This increases your critical strike against vulnerable and crowd controlled enemies. They're immediately crowd controlled when they touch the poison trap, so that's there. And then against vulnerable enemies as well. So it's a double standard there. They're always vulnerable. They're always crowd controlled when they're hitting a trap. Adrenaline rush. While moving, you gain 5% energy regeneration. So this is important too with this build. Like I was saying, you really don't have that basic resource regeneration. So you actually have to use this to actually get that kiting constant flow of energy going, you know? And then haste. While you're above 50% maximum energy, you gain 15% movement speed. While below 50% maximum energy, you gain 15% increased attack speed. So when you're below the 50% mark, you gain attack speed with your resources. When you're above it, you get movement speed. And precision, this is very important as well. Critical strikes with marksman skills grant you precision. You gain 4% increased critical strike damage per stack of precision up to maximum of 20%. When you reach maximum precision, your next marksman skills is a guaranteed critical strike that deals 40% increased critical strike damage, then consumes all stacks of precision. This is insane. As sometimes when I'm kiting around, you will see literally I'll go from 8.5k attack power to 12.2k attack power. It's actually insane. And I'll be doing demonstrations and playthroughs too, and then show you guys what the playstyle is as well in the next video. Paragon. This Paragon board is very in depth. This is Wudijo's Paragon board. I copied it to the Chi. It's absolutely beautiful. There's nothing better in my opinion. I looked into it. And then for this build, the rapid build, Wudijo is very good at what he does and his theory crafting, and I fucking live and die by it. He's really good at what he does. If you guys don't know who he is, I will drop a link down below for his Twitch and his YouTube. But yeah, this is Wudijo's build. I'll be dropping this build down here beneath too, and I will be dropping my build down beneath as well in the links below, because I will give you my aspect, and I'm giving credit to Wudijo because I did break off of his build. And then stats. This is where we break down the stats here, like I was saying. Damage reduction is very important for survivability, and a lot of people really don't realize this. This is like super important. So with your legs and your chest, they're really important to have damage reduction from close, damage reduction from distance, damage reduction from injured, or damage reduction from poison, depending on what you are. I would say damage reduction from distance more than close. I mean, not distance, more close than distance, because you know the close enemies is where you're gonna be worried about the most. The distance enemies, really, there's not that many. You'll have like a couple arrows, maybe a corpse crossbow or something. But like I said, make sure you look for those damage reduction rolls on your armors and your and your legs. It's super important, very important. But make sure the damage dealt is very important in this build as well. Like I was saying, vulnerable damage. I'm sorry guys, I'm a little everywhere, but damage to vulnerable enemies is literally what gives you the most damage in this build. And you'll notice when you make an enemy vulnerable, there will be like a purple or blue little aura around them, and it'll say vulnerable and like gold letters, and it literally gives you 20% more base value of damage. So that's actually massive, and that's just the base, right? So when I was telling you have the crossbow and it has a 40%, and you can get another 65%, that's 120% more base damage. So if you can understand like why that's super important, that is why. I appreciate you guys. This is my information on the rapid fire rogue. Hopefully you guys like it. I'm sorry for the little bit of stutter here and there. I do raw edits currently right now. I love you guys. You guys have an amazing one. Peace.